Hello, in this video I'm going to show how to quickly develop a search component using HTML and vanilla JavaScript. I'm going to follow a progressive enhancement strategy. That means that I'm going to create a really basic but functional component, and then I'm going to build on top of that, adding new features and functionality. So let's start with the HTML, with the structure of our component. And if we think about it, a search component is nothing more than a form where we have an input for the user to type and a button that will submit that form. So this would be the most basic version of the search component, and we have developed it in under 1 minute. It's ugly, but it's functional, because when we click on the search button, it's going to submit the form to the page indicated there in the action. We don't have an action, so it's the same page. It's the cell. So that's it. We have a search component. It's ugly, but it's functional. We still need to do more things, obviously, like adding styles and things like that. But what we're going to do is focus on accessibility. Accessibility should be taken into account at the beginning of every project. And we already have, even with just these three things, we already have some accessibility concerns. Like, for example, an input should have a label. So let's put it inside a label, and then we're going to use a span to say, hey, this is search span. Okay. So now this input has a label. So when the user focuses on it, it will say input search. That is something nicer than just saying input. Yeah, what's that input? You know, is to type a name, is to type an email, is to type what? So let's continue adding functionality little by little. So another thing that we can do is, like right now, this input is a text box. You see, I can type, and that's fine. That's because we haven't specified a type. And because of that, this input is of type text. But this is a search box, so we want to say the type is search. Now, you may say, hey, it looks the same. What's the difference? And yeah, visually it's not the same, but there's slight changes that we're going to see. So for example, when the user types, we have now a clear button. And that's because the browser is identifying that this input is a search box. It's not a text box. So it adds a little bit of, fancy flair, let's say it that way. But another thing that it does is that it helps assistive technologies like screen readers know that this is for searching. This is not an input that you're going to just write text and it will be submitted with a form. It's something that is used for search. And following that idea, there are many types of form. There's a contact form, there's a form to request a demo, there's a form for everything. But this is a search form. This is a form that we're going to use to perform a search. So to let assistive technologies know, we can add a role of search to our form. So just with these three things, adding a label, adding a type of search, and a role of search here, we are boosting the accessibility of our component considerably. Another thing that we can do in the form is, if we're going to have more than one search component on the page, we may want to identify them a little bit better. Like, for example, if this one is used for searching within the site, we may want to say, hey, we want to add an area label that says site-wide. So when the screen reader reaches the form, it will read site-wide search. and the user now knows what this search is going to do. If we were, we have a library and we want to search the catalog, we can say, hey, this is a catalog search. There's no need to put search at the end of the area label, and it's because as we have added a role search, this is now a landmark, a search landmark, so it will be announced at the end. So if we put catalog search in the area label, then it's going to be catalog search search, and we don't need to repeat search twice. So let's just put that. Anyway, this is something that you can change depending on what you want, and this area label is completely optional. It's convenient if you have more than one search, but it's optional. Okay, so again, now we have a functional component that doesn't even need JavaScript yet, because the form is going to be submitted, and then we're going to have a page that processes the string and shows the results. And I'm not going to focus on that page because it's outside of the scope of the component in itself, of the search component. But that is old school HTML and old school web development. Right now, instead of redirecting to a new page for the search, many times what you may want to do is to show the results on the same page. So you would call an API or a service, you get the results and you display them. So let's do that. So we can do that by saying, hey, let me first encapsulate this a little. This is going to be some generic JavaScript code. That means that it's going to be a little bit different. So what we're going to do is that we're going to get all the searches on the page, and for that what we're going to do is that we're going to add a class to the component, a class of search component, to the root element of the component, the form, so we can get them easily. So we can say, hey, document query selector all, and select all the search components, all the elements that have the search component class. And now for all of them, all of the ones that are in the page, let's see, searches.length plus. What we're going to do is that we are going to get the button, and when it's clicked, we're going to prevent the default behavior that is submitted in the form, and we're going to do our thing. We're going to, call the API or the service, get the results, show them on this page, on a table, or whatever. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the root of the component, that is going to be the element in itself, and then we're going to get the button. So this is the submit button. It's going to be query selector, and just so we know that this is to submit, we don't need to add a type of submit because we are inside a form, so the button will automatically submit the form, but we're going to add a type of submit so it's easy to identify the button later. So we're going to say, hey, it's a button that has a type of submit. So that's our submit button. So what we're going to do is that the submit button, we're going to add an event listener. When it's clicked, what we're going to do is that, and I'm going to read the event, we're going to prevent the default value, the default action that is submitting the form, and instead we're going to do the search thing, like call API service, get data, show data, etc. Again, as with the result page, I'm not going to focus on this. This is not important at the moment. It's outside of the scope of the search component. What you do with it is, what you do or how you perform the search in itself, it's on the developer, it's not on the component. but the code would go here. Ideally, if you follow this this tutorial and you do something on React or something, what you would do is that you would pass a function that would be called on the when we submit the thing, so you can prevent the whole thing. So now when I click on search, you see it's not triggering the form submission. And with this, we already have a search component. So what we can do is, let's start by making it look a little bit prettier, because right now it looks kind of ugly. I mean, it's just basic HTML. So let me come here and I'm going to add a little bit of things like display flex to the body and say, hey, align items in the center and justify the content in the center too. So its center is horizontally and vertically, and I'm going to put a height, a height of 100 VH, and we're going to remove the margins so there's no scrolling. So now the component is easier to see here. Okay, so let's start with adding our search component styles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create it so it looks like it's all a single input that has search button inside. So for that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to add a border. Let's see, 2 pixels solid. Let's leave it at that for now. And so now it's taking that, that's good. So we're going to make the borders, we're going to make it rounded. So border radius of 1 rem, actually 1 rem, maybe too little. It's too tough. Let's make it larger. So it should have at least a clicking area of 44 pixels for accessibility. So 44 is, if the default the default font size is normally 16 on the browser, 44 would be around 3 point something rem, actually, or 2 point something. So we're going to give it a height of 3.5 rem. That should be enough. That should be 42 and 8. That should be 50 pixels. Should be more than enough. And then we're going to make it a width of 200 pixels. No, 200 pixels is too little. So what we're going to do is, to make it responsive, we're going to say, hey, the width, it's 100%. Now it's not good. It's adapting, but it's not good. So what we're going to do again is we're going to say, hey, we used to use clamp. Say it's going to have minimum of 200 pixels. That is going to be around 15 rem. I want you to take 100% of the space, and the maximum that I want you to take is 25 rem. Let's see how that looks. So you see now is responsive with a max width of 25 rem. Actually, let's make it 90. No, actually 100 is better, because if we put it inside a div, we want it to occupy the whole thing and not 90. That wouldn't be nice. Okay, so we have this box that has the label, the input, and the button. Let's see what we can do. So let's add a display of flex, and this is the best moment to say, I am not a designer, so whatever I do, maybe you don't want to listen to me. And let's align the items vertically. So align up center. Good. That is good. Let's continue adding features. So now this would be a lot easier using something like Sass or less, because we would just nest things. We can nest with CSS, but it's not fully supported. So let's just do it the old way for now. So the search component, let's see, we have a label, and we have an input and we have a button. So let's say the button, let's start with the button. The button, we want it to be, so if the height of the component is 3.5 rem, let's make it 3 rem high and wide. Okay, and let's put a display of flex. Again, align item center, justify content center, so it's centered horizontally and vertically. And we're going to make it border radius 50%, so it's a circle. And let's remove the borders. I don't like the border. Okay, so we have our button there. So we're going to see now, we're going to push the button to this side by, and let's do one thing, color white, background black. Okay. We're going to push the button to this corner, and we're going to do it by expanding the input to occupy all the width. So we're going to do it, remember the outer box has flex, so we can do that by saying, hey, the label has a flex of 1, so it's going to expand, boom, to take all the space. And you can see that now we have a problem. This search button is touching the border. We don't want that. So let's say margin left, sorry, right of 0.25 rem. Okay, perfect. So that looks there a little bit nicer. But the input is still just a small place. So let's do one thing. We're going to say this has a display of flex. And now the search component, the input in itself is going to have a flex of 1 again. And now you see the input is taking the whole thing. The only problem that we have is the search, the actual label, the text of the label is taking some space, and it's not good. So let's go there now. Let's say, hey, the search component, the label, the span, what do we want to do? I don't know if I want it visible actually, but oh yeah, I mentioned before that I would use it as the placeholder instead of you know, a placeholder attribute. So what we can say is position absolute. Okay, so you see it's already on top of the input, and I can type, which is good. And maybe we can put it on top the same way that some people do it. So let's see. Let's start by saying font family. I don't like that it's Times New Roman. Let's put an Arial, Verdana, and sans serif. Okay, and let's put it position absolute at top 0, left 1 rem maybe. Oh, we need to add a position relative here, otherwise it's going to be okay. So see, now we have the search, and when we click here, it goes to the input. But you see, the input has some issues that we need to work. First of all, it's not taking the whole height. So when I click outside, look what's happening. It's having a problem. So let's add for the input, we're going to add a height of 100%. That didn't work. And I did something wrong. Let's see. So I did this. Oh, maybe I can do this flex direction column. Column or row? Oh, I'm doing something wrong here. Let's see what I need to do. What am I doing wrong? I'm doing something super wrong. I want this. So let's say this has a, and this has a, I can say a height of 100 and a height of 100. Oh, there it is. I don't even need to put the height of 100. It just goes there. Perfect. That's what I need, the height of 100 in the label. You see? So now the input has some problems. Let's start with this. It's good that anywhere that we click is going to the text box. So that's good. Even if we click on the search text, that I don't like that we can select it. So we are going to do something here. We're going to say user select none. So now when I click on it, you see I cannot select the search. But we have a problem, and it's that the search some issues. Let's start with the first one. It has a border that is really ugly and it overflows. So let's go to the search component itself and let's say, hey, overflow hidden. So we're cutting it there. Good. We still have the border that is a little bit annoying. So let's remove it. So let's say the input has a border of 0 and the border is gone. But we still have something. You see, this text is too small. So let's make it a little bit larger. Font size 1 rem, 1.5. That may be too much. 125. Like that is fine. And another thing that we want is padding left of 1 rem, 125 again. That looks a little bit better. So let's update the span so it matches. Okay. So you see now it's starting to look a little bit better. But there's still some things. Again, the component is working. It's looking a little bit better, but it's still not perfect. So what we can do is, what can we do? Let's start by doing one thing. I don't like that this is supposed to be a unit. A search component is a solid thing. But instead, because of the outline, we can see that it's 2 elements. So I'm not a big fan of that. So what I'm going to do, and do this with care, is removing the outline. But I'm not going to just remove the outline and say, oh, it's done. Because the problem then is that we have an accessibility problem, an accessibility issue. Because imagine that you're here and then the user doesn't know where they are. Okay, so we need to add, you see, I'm tabbing between the 2 fields and you don't know which one is active. You know the input because you can see the caret blinking, but otherwise it would be impossible to know what's happening. So what we're going to do is that when the component has the focus is when we are going to outline not the input or the button, we're going to outline the whole thing. So you see, and to do that we can use something that is focus within. Okay, and then what we can say is outline 1 pixel dash, and let's put black for example, and we click there and you see now it behaves like a single unit. Then you can focus on the button. It's unclear that the button is selected, so we can look into that in a second. And I'm not a big fan of this square. So let's try to do something slightly different. So right now the border doesn't have a color. So let's give it a color of 777. I think it's the least amount that you need for contrast between white and gray. Or something like that. And when the focus is within, instead of using an outline that looks a little bit ugly, what we're going to do is that we are going to do we're going to change the border color. Instead of 777, we're going to change it to black. So now we're here, we click, and you see there's a change. It may be sad, a little bit subtle, but you can see that it's there. So maybe another thing that we can do is maybe add a box shadow 0001 px. So you see it grows. Not only is black, but now it changes to like 2 pixels. You know, one extra pixel of with the border, so it's more visible. I think that could be a good way, so you can tell that it's active. Another problem now is that you don't know that the search is the one that is active. So we can do something like that. Let's see. So the button in itself, the background itself being black, we're going to put 777. And what we're going to do is that when the focus is within there, the button is going to have a background of, let's put 666, 444. So see, it changes color when we're inside to a darker gray. I don't know if it's obvious, but but still when we focus on it, we don't know it's focused. So what we can do is that we say, hey, when the button is focused in itself, when it's focused, make it black. So see, now there's a slight change when it's selected and when it's not. Okay, so let's continue. I don't like this, it's too big and too dark. So let's make it a little bit lighter, color 777 again, and font size 0.9 rem. 8 too little. This may be too little actually, visually, but yeah. They can type, they can delete if they want to, although I'm not a big fan because this X is not what we want, because it doesn't match the style of the rest of the things, so it's not ideal. So what we want to do is probably remove it, but the problem is that there's no standard way of removing it. Each browser has a different way of doing it, and that is a pain in the neck. So what we can do, and let's see, is I don't know if we can. No, we cannot. I don't know. Let's see. Well, let's try. So the input. So the idea is that there's a, I think in IE is something like MS clear, and you say, hey, display none. But this is not IE, this is Chrome. So what we may need to do is using the special one for Chrome, that is going to be WebKit search button, I'm going to say, and it's probably wrong. Let's see. Oh no, still there. So it's not search button. So no, search decoration. Pretty sure it was search decoration. No, so search cancel button. Let's see. Oh, still there. I don't know if it's reloading actually. Let me add a. Oh, there it is. It's gone. Do I need the width 0? I don't think so. I don't. It's just displaying. It was not refreshing. So it may be even the search decoration would work. So we have this here, and oh no, it's still there. Oh, so I need the width. Let's see. It's not refreshing. It's a little bit annoying when it doesn't refresh. A width and a height of 0. It's not refreshing this page. I guess that it's because I'm changing only the CSS. A search decoration. Why? It seemed to have been working, but now it's not. It's kind of annoying. Oh, and I need 2 of these actually, because it's a pseudo element. Oh, did that do it? Oh, that was it. I was missing. So can I use just display none? So yes, it was displaying. Okay, perfect. So now it's not there. We lost that functionality, but at least it looks better compared to how it was before. So let's see, what else can we do? So let's add, now it says search. I don't like that. What we're going to do is that we're going to add an icon there. So for the icons, we want to do something similar to what we're doing here. We want to do, we still want to keep the text span search span, but we want to add an icon. We can do it with, for example, something like font awesome. In my case, I'm going to do something a little bit probably not a good idea, but I'm going to create an SVG inline here, and I'm going to have a view box of 0, 0, 100, 100, so it's easier, and let's put a width of 3 rem, 3 and a height of 3 rem. And what we're going to do is that we're going to put a magnifying glass. So the magnifying glass is simple, is a circle that is going to be around 40 normally. Normally it's going to be in the diagonal line, and it's going to be a radius of 30. Stroke width equals 5. Oh, it's not visible because it's overflowing the search. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's first let's go to the button. Here is the button. So let's go to the search component button, and the span inside, we're going to hide it in an accessible way. So we're going to do that by saying, hey, the width is 1 pixel, height is 1 pixel. The button has some, we're going to add an overflow of hidden and a position of relative again, and we're going to say position absolute for the label, and we're going to push it outside of the screen 1,000 inches. That should be more than enough. And it's gone. Yay! So now we can see our SVG here. That's good. So stroke width 5, and we want fill none. Stroke current color. Okay, perfect. And because the current color in the button is white, then that's white. That looks a little bit big. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Not much better, but we'll see. And now the handle is going to be just a simple D that is going to be from, let's say, this 40, 30, let's say 70, 70 to 90, 90. 90. And then we can copy the stroke current color and stroke this. and we paste it here. We could put it into a group, but let's keep it simple. So let's make it a little bit wider, maybe a little bit more wider. And instead of coming from 70-70, it looks like maybe 65-65 or 60-60. Yeah, like that. So still a little bit big, not a big fan. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Yeah, I like that a little bit better. So the good thing is that because, and I'm going to expand this a little, just so it's easier to read actually, I'm going to come here and say move this stroke current color. I'm going to move it to the group so it's not so cluttered. I like it actually how it looks now. So because the span is hidden in an accessible way, when the button is focused, it will read search because the text is there. It may be hidden, but it's there. And for visual, sighted users, the magnifying glass is like a universal thing for search. So it should be okay. And in the case of, and we can say area hidden equals true here. So the image is hidden and they only read search. They don't see that way when they focus on the button, they only see the search, or they only get announced the search and they don't get announced that there's an image inside. The image is just decorational in this case. Not decorational, it's giving some information, but it's the information that we're getting from the span. So now we have a really better looking component. Still, I'm not completely sold with how this looks, because you cannot tell when it's focus. The difference is so light that I don't know if it's good. So let's go back to the button and say, hey, add a border of 1 pixel dashed white. Let's see. Oh, I did something wrong. Okay, let's see. Okay, so now you can tell that the button is clear, that the button is focused because it has an outline around it. That's cool. And maybe what we can do is add a box shadow and insert box shadow 0001 pixel white again. So now it's even more obvious that it's selected. And it looks like it's the focus. It could look like it's the focus. We could use that technique for that actually, but no, it's fine. So we type, we tab, and we know it's there. Okay, so now we have a search component that looks a lot nicer. You can search. It has a label here that says search that I'm not a big fan, but it's okay. We can do the same thing that they do in Material UI, for example, that the placeholder is here, and when you focus, it goes up. So let's try that actually. Let's try. So let's come here and say where is the label span is here. So by default it's that, but we don't want that. Let's do one thing. Let's say search component label. So let's see, input focus. Yeah, but the problem is that the span is before, so let's move it behind. And the problem now is that Okay, that's not a problem. Oh, it's a problem because, oh no, it's not a problem. It's gone to the beginning, that's fine. Not a big fan of that actually. So let's say pointer events none here, because before when I was clicking here, it's coming to the beginning. I'm not a big fan. Pointer events. Yes, no, it's still going to the beginning. I don't want it to go to the beginning. Okay, well, it seems to be working fine. So what we're going to do is when the input has the focus is when we are going to put it on top and have a font size of 0.85. But meanwhile, we're going to put it input focus, sorry, plus span. So we want to select the span that is right behind the input. Position absolute, blah, 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 blah. And top 50%. And then we need transform, translate y minus 50%. Okay. Oh, that's not good. Whew. Let's see, let's put a 0 here. Yeah, that's a little bit better. The only thing is that you see the text is there, that's not good. So what we can do is say, hey, this field is required, which makes sense. We cannot submit the form until we have some text. So what we're going to do is if the input is focused or if it's not valid, then it's going to be at the top. If it's not valid, sorry, if it's valid, my bad. If it's valid, it's going to be at the top. If it's valid, that means that it has a value. So now when I click out, it's valid, so it doesn't come back. But when I remove it and I click out, it goes down. Perfect. The only thing is that it's jumping all of a sudden. That's not really nice. So let's say, hey, transition. Let's put all for now. All is not good, but we'll see how it goes. So we click here and we see that it goes like that. It's in an animated fashion, like Material UI does, which is kind of nice. Top 0, I don't like. Let's see how that works. Oh, so it's animated now. But you see the problem, another issue that we have is that this includes movement. The movement doesn't have to be bad, like animations and transitions are not inherently bad, but there's people that have issues with them, like people with vestibular disorders, that they can get disoriented or get vertigo when there's too much movement. So what we may want to do is we're going to do something at the bottom that says media prefers reduced motion. Is it like that? And we're going to say everything transition non-important. So we're going to override that transition. So see, now it's going like that. But if I go to the settings, and probably shouldn't be showing this, but system preferences. So I go to the accessibility here and I say display, reduce motion, and I come back here. You see now there's no transition. You see? Now let's come back here and say, hey, let's activate the motion again, and now it does it. So we added an extra feature I mean, this is a small animation. It's not going to be that bad, hopefully, but it's good to know that you can do that. And again, not all animations are created equal. Some are worse than the others. Like, for example, a fade in, fade out is not bad, but things that include movement and, you know, moving parts, yeah, let's just undo them. So now we know that it's taking that into account. We have that also into account. So our search component is starting to look nice, actually. It has some features there. And let's add, it's really basic. It's a really simple search component. It's like the one that you can see on any website. So let's add something that makes it different. And let's add dictation. Let's use, for example, the web speech API to add some speech recognition. And we can add a button here that allows people to actually talk. This is an interesting feature that is good for accessibility, but I don't think is fully advantageous for people with disabilities, because if you need dictation, you're going to have an app that does it for you. But it may be interesting for usability because, for example, if you have fat fingers like me, when you're typing on the virtual keyboard on the phone, it's tough. It's tough. For me, it would be super nice if the search input had a button that I can click, and then I talk, and whatever is said gets transferred into the input. And that's what we're going to do, actually. And for that, we're going to use the speech recognition API. So let's start by adding a button that does that. So let's go with it. So let's come back here, and we're going to add a new button. We're going to add it before. So right now we have two buttons that are the same. We don't want that. First of all, this button for dictation, we don't want it to submit the form because it's going to perform an action. It's going to be, the action is going to be, listen to the person. So we don't want a type of submit, we want a type of button. Then we don't want the span, like the label of the button, to be search. We want it to be dictate. And then instead of using a magnifying glass, we can do a microphone maybe, or something like that. Let's try that. So let's try to draw a microphone really quick. Let me remove this, we don't really need it. Let me put this in the middle, 15, 50, 50. And now I want it to be a little bit wider. And I want it to be also stroke line cap. I want the ends to be rounded, so a strong line cap round. Let's see, yes, like that. So that would be our microphone. Then we're going to have the base and the holder. So let's add another path here for the base. Let's put 30 here and 70 here. Let's add a C of 30, 100, 70, 100. Let's see how that looks. That's going to look terrible. Yes, somehow I knew it. Let's add this stroke line cap to here to remove some clutter. Let's add it to the group. Okay, that simplifies the line a lot. That's good. So we want to, and let's add a fill of none also in the group. Okay, better. So we want it to be more than 15. Yes, definitely more than 15. 35, and this should add 35. Let's see. And now let's make it 10. That looks a little bit better. I don't know if it looks like a microphone, but it looks a little bit better. 80, 80. Maybe 84, 84. a little bit more. And let's separate it. How can we separate it? Maybe 25 here, 75 here. Yes, so that looks a little bit more like it's a microphone on the base. And finally, we're going to have another path that is going to be just a vertical line from 5070 to 5090, and stroke width of 10 again. Let's make this 95. Okay, I don't know if that looks like a microphone. That's my intention, but I don't know if I succeeded at that. It looks a lot thicker than this one, so that's something I don't like. Let's make it slightly thinner. 6 here. Maybe here that can be a 6 again. Let's see. Yeah, so you see that's a microphone, or kind of, and this is our magnifying glass. So now we have two buttons, one that does nothing when I click it, and the other one that would be submitting the form, but right now we're preventing it. So let's go back here and let's add the dictation functionality. So what we do is first we're going to get the dictate button, search, query selector. We only want one button, and it's going to be the button that has the type equals to button. Okay, as you may have noticed, we're not using any class because we have attributes that make them unique. We only need a class for the component, the root of the component. You can add classes, but for this example, for this demo, we are okay. So let's do this. So let's say when the dictate button, we're going to add an event listener. I'm going to say, hey, when you click on it, let's see what we do. So what we are going to do is that we're going to use the speech recognition. So it's not fully supported by all the browsers. So let's start by speech recognition. It's going to be equal to speech recognition if it's supported. Recognition. Or if it's a WebKit browser, you may need the prefix WebKit. So let's do speech recognition once again. So what we're going to do is when we click here, what we want to do is start the speech recognition itself. So let's do that step by step. So what we are going to do is we need to say, hey, let's start a recognition event that is going to be a new speech recognition, and I'm typing everything, so I'm probably making a lot of errors. Eventually we will get a red bubble here that will tell us where the error is. And what we're going to do is that the speech recognition, what it does is that it listens and it detects when the person stops speaking. So what we need to do is when they stop speaking, when the speech ends, we need to trigger the recognition itself. Try to see if the browser can tell us what the person said. So let's start with recognition on speech end. It's going to be a function that what it does is that it stops the recognition. Recognition.stop. Now, what we need next is it's when we get a result. So recognition on result. This is a function again. And what we do is that for this we need the event, and the event has the results. That's what we want. So we can say, hey, the transcript of what the person says is in the E in the results 00 to indicate that it's the first one, and the transcript. And now what we will do is that whatever the person said, we're going to put it in the input. So let me actually select the input here. So we're going to say, hey, the input, let's call it search box. The search box in itself is the input. So we're going to say, hey, the search box, the value is equal to the transcript. So what we're doing is we start a new recognition. When the person stops speaking, we stop analyzing the text. And when we get a result from the browser, we take the transcript and we put it in the input. So the only thing left to do would be recognition.start. So start the recognition process when we click on this button. And we already get an error. What error am I getting? Unexpected token. Oh, that's ugly. Let me see. Did I forget to close something? I don't think so. Let me save. Let me come here. I'm gonna type here hello. Oh, it worked. This is just a bug. I don't know why it's there, but it's not true. It's a mistake from the editor. Hopefully it will go away in a second. Maybe when I save something different. Yeah, it goes away. Perfect. So you see, when I click here and I say something, the speech recognition API is working and is going to move it to the input. So for example, I'm going to say, hello world, and it goes there. It works. It works. We need to be careful with this. Sometimes it doesn't work, but in general, it's pretty accurate. And the funny thing is that you can specify, like I'm doing it in a really basic way. This is the default language that I think by default in my browser is English. But you can set the language to Spanish, French, German, and the speech recognition will work on those languages too. So speech recognition is a really powerful tool. So now we have a fancy search box that has speech recognition and it has the search functionality itself. So let's do one extra thing. If the browser doesn't support speech recognition, we don't want this icon here. So let's go back here to here. Let's go to the button again. It's here. So let me say, hey, if the button is of type button, that is the dictation, we're going to say display none. Okay, so by default, the dictate button or the dictation is not displayed. And what we do, and let me do one thing here, is that if it has a class of visible, then is when we say, hey, display flex, that is the one that it used to have. And what we're going to do is that the speech recognition, we're only going to call it if it's supported by the browser, speech recognition. So if the speech recognition is there, is when we trigger it. And it's not only when we trigger it, is when we say, hey, dictate button dot class list dot add visible. Actually, it shouldn't be here. It shouldn't be here. It should be out here. I made a mistake, and this should be out here. Let's save. Boom, like that. Why it should be there? Because otherwise it wouldn't be displayed until we click on the button. So now let's see. Oh, you see the button pops up. That's good. So initially is not there because it has a display of none. But if if the browser supports speech recognition, then we display. There's no point on displaying the dictation button or the speech recognition button if it's not available. And now what we can do is that we're going to come here and say, hey, instead of being search, we're going to say type or dictate to search. So that way we are announcing that we have this dictation available in the component. So we click there, we tab, and again, this works with the keyboard, this works with the mouse. It identifies when the focus is inside because it changes, it focuses. The buttons also are identified when they have focus, which is cool. And we have the dictation feature. So I think that we got some nice search component here, and we built it in around 1 hour. Let's add a couple more interactions. So there is one problem now, like for example, when I click on the dictation button and I say hello world, there's a problem, and the problem is that the user doesn't know that it's recording. There's a red button going on top on the tab, but there's nothing indicating it within the component, and that can be a problem for two reasons. One, they may click again, and then we're triggering the same thing again and again, which is not good. And another issue is that there's no visual indication that we're recording. I would prefer if we have one. So let's do one thing. We're going to take advantage that we're using inline SVGs. And one fun thing is that you can change the path of an inline SVG, and you can do it with CSS. So for example, right now we have 3 paths here: the microphone, the bass, and the stand. So what we can do, and let me go to the bottom of it all. So let me see, dictate. Okay. So I'm going to go here to the button, and I'm going to say the SVG. I'm just going to use the path directly. So I'm going to try it first on hover and see if it works. And if it does, I'm going to change it to a class, and we're going to add a class so we know when it's listening. So right now, again, everything is on the microphone, and that doesn't look that great. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it 3 lines, and they move as if it's recording sound or listening or something. So for that, we're going to say, hey, the path is going to be different. So right now it's like that. So it's going to be a path that goes from M5030 to 5070. Actually, maybe better 65 to 35. Let's see how that works. Not a big fan. 40, 60. No, 40, no, I want to make it larger, so it needs to be 3070, sorry. Like that. Okay, that's okay. No, that's not okay. Let's 2080. Let's see how that works. Okay, and I don't fully like that width. Let's see. Oh no, I like it. So it's a stroke width. Let's make it a little bit smaller, just 18. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to the first child. We're going to move it, transform, translate minus 30% or 40. Let's see what happens. That's too far. Let's try 30. Refresh. That's a little bit better. And then the second one is going to go 30. Let's see. Perfect. What we're going to do is that we're going to add another animation. That's keyframes voice recording, and it's going to be 0%, 100%. We're going to make the path is going to be like this, and otherwise at 50% the path is going to be a little bit bigger, hopefully. Not bigger, no, if it's bigger, let's make it 3070 and 3070, yeah, small and then big, like that. Yes, so we're going to say, hey, the animation is going to be voice recording, has to be fast because we don't know how long the speech is going to be, so let's put half a second and let's repeat it infinite. So that's doing okay, but they're all moving at the same time, so let's change it a little bit. So we say, hey, animation delay half of the time, and the same thing for this one, and now they're going to move at different times a little bit better. So what we're going to do is that instead of doing it on hover, what we're going to do is when the button is listening, we're going to change the paths. And what we're going to do is, oops, it's not listening right now. You see, it doesn't happen on hover. What we're going to do is that in our code, we're going to say, hey, when you click and you start the recognition, let's say let listening equals false. By default, it's not listening. When we start listening, we say listening equal true. And here, listen, I'm sorry. Oh, we will need this for later. So what we're going to do is like the, how did we call it? The dictate button. So the dictate button, class list, add listening, and here when we remove the listening equals false, here we remove it. So now what we do is that we change the microphone for the waves once it's recording, and we put it back once it stops recording. Let's see how it works. Does this work? It did. That's great. So that's the animation for the microphone. Maybe we can do it even better if we, let's see, can we do transition here? Let's try something that probably is not the best idea. Transition all 0.2 seconds. So maybe we will see now the microphone moving to the paths, moving to the new location. Let's see. Yeah, it looks better. Well, it didn't read this quite exactly, but it's fine. Again, it's not a perfect component, but it's better than nothing. So we have that. Now what we want to avoid is double clicking while it's listening. So for that is why we added the listening variable. So what we're going to do is we're only going to do this part if it's not already listening. That way it's we're using like a sentinel variable. So listening will only, sorry, the speech recognition will only be triggered if it's not already listening for speech recognition. So we improved that a little. Hello, how are you? That's good. I'm going to click on search. Eventually you could change, or we could change the on result, not only to update this, but also to search directly. Not a big fan of that idea. I would prefer, like we saw that sometimes it fails. So it's good to have some, you know, just display the value. And if it's okay, then they can click on search, on the search submit button. So that was one of the interactions, and it's cool that we did the SVG into that. And then another thing that we can do is, for example, imagine that the person doesn't have dictation, that it's not supported. So we have a problem because, so that would be wrong. What we want to do is we're going to type, and let's put here another span. Actually, I don't know if I like that idea. Well, we'll see. Because this is going, because we made it only specific to the thing, is going to look bad. Yeah, not a good idea. So we'll see. Let's see. We will work around it. So what we're going to do is span. Let's go to the accessibility. Maybe what we can do is one thing. I'm going to remove this span and this span, and what I'm going to do is the listening class, instead of adding it to the dictate button, I'm going to add it to the whole component, so we know if it's listening. So search, and here we need to do the search again, so we know if it's listening or not. And then we need to change a little bit the CSS, so instead of the listening being here, the listening is going to be here. We remove it from here, and we remove it from here, and put it back here. Okay, so now look good. So now we know when it's going to listen or not. So let's say, hello world. Oh, it didn't check the well, it's okay. But the idea is that it's working. Another thing that we can see is, as we did before, with the reduced motion, right now it's not taking that into account, which is a little bit annoying. So let's see, hello, it's still moving. Oh, yeah, again, it's not perfect. But the idea is it moves even when we don't want it, and that's because we only stop the transitions. So we're going to say animation, and important also for the, actually let's do search component, so it's specific to our component. So now hello, at least it's showing that. That's good. So one thing that we want to do is, we don't want this, we want it to be type to search instead of type or dictate. But once we know that we can dictate to, we want to change that. So let's do that here. Let's go to the label. So let's copy the label, const search label, search query selector is going to be the span inside, directly inside the label. So what we do is that if there's a speech recognition, what we're going to do is the search label, we're going to update it to say type or dictate to search. So see, initially it just says type to search, and when it detects that it has the option to do dictation, then it adds the type or dictate to search. So that's another option. So this is our search component. We built it from the ground up, from basic HTML into this nice looking component with icons, a nice border, some animations, and we even included the web speech API to allow for dictation, which is a nice feature. I tried to follow as much as possible the accessibility guidelines. There's probably something that I missed, but I consider that it's important to include it always in every single project. And that's it. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.